The 18 Strong Podcast, episode number 186 with Brad Thompson from Elevate Sports Performance and Chiropractic.
With strength, you're basically trying to move the heaviest weight possible for the set number of reps. But for power training, we do want to have some weight to it, but we got to be able to move that weight fast.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzero.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast. This week, I'm Jeff Pellizzero, your host, and we've got Brad Thompson from Elevate Sports Performance and Chiropractic on, and we're talking all about power. Power is kind of the name of the game these days, as you see guys like Dustin Johnson and even Tiger Woods now, kind of recapturing the title as one of the fastest swingers on the tour. So I wanted to bring Brad on to talk about what they do with some of their clients. He works in a facility in Nevada, which they work with professionals, they work with amateurs, they work with juniors. And, the question is always, how can I hit a ball farther? How can I get more distance? So Brad's really going to walk us through kind of the process that they use in, first of all, testing for power, training for power. How do you use it? Why is it important? And, what factors are there to hitting a ball farther? Brad is not only a performance coach, but he's also a former competitive amateur golfer. He's a competitive long drive golfer. So he knows this from both sides of the coin, from the trainer and fitness professional's perspective, but also from the side of the golfer that's looking to not only hit a ball further, but he comes from a background of playing very high-level competitive golf. So a great interview regarding, what are the things to think about to first just gain power, but also to have that power help your golf game as well. What are the differences and what are the similarities that you need to think about when training for power, but if that power is specifically meant for just hitting it further, or if it's meant for making your golf game better, which I would imagine that's the case why you want more distance. So like I mentioned, we kind of talk about everything under the sun when it comes to looking at a client on, where are the power leaks? What are the sources of maybe either physical limitations or speed or strength that you are lacking? And then how do you go about fixing that? What are the ways that you prioritize that and maybe periodize that in your training? Or if you're just looking to, work out for better health, better movement, better fitness, and better golf, what are the ways that you can still kind of maximize the use of some of this power training? I think you're really going to get a lot out of this interview. If you are still looking for a way to get on track for this golf season, for you to get in better shape, play better golf, you don't have a plan, you don't have a program yet, I would highly recommend you checking out our program, the Golf Body Blueprint, which we put together a few months back. We just have started to release it out to everyone on the subscriber list, everyone that follows the 18 Strong podcast. And we've gotten some fantastic results. Guys that are increasing their swing speed, girls that are increasing their swing speed, dropping weight, but also getting stronger, getting leaner. And it's a full-blown 8-week program with online instruction, online videos, tracking sheets, everything. There's a membership portal that you get into, and you have all the resources there to really walk you through each and every single day of what you should be doing day in and day out. So again, if you don't have a plan, you don't have a blueprint, you don't have a program that is going to get you to that next level, go check out the Golf Body Blueprint at golfbodyblueprint.com. All right, here's Brad Thompson. So give me a little background just on Elevate and what you guys are doing there, kind of the population that you guys work with there. And then we'll kind of dive into, your background a little bit as well.
Yeah, so here at Elevate Sports Performance and Chiropractic, so we are a sports performance facility, but we also have a chiropractor in-house as well and a massage therapist. So we basically do a full kind of spectrum thing where we work with athletes, work with general population. We also work with people who are in pain, and then we work on getting them back to fitness. So it's basically the chiropractor helps bridge the gap from them being in pain to getting them into the gym and then keeping them pain-free.
And so I would imagine it kind of goes in both directions then. So some of the clientele are people that are already training there. They've got some issues, send them over to the chiropractor or to, more the medical professional side. and to continue their fitness stuff. But I would imagine, does this bring in a lot of new people that maybe just came to the chiropractor for some sort of injury or whatnot, and then they are kind of swept into this whole world of, oh my gosh, the chiropractic side helped me feel better, but now I realize that, you know, what they're doing more on the fitness side, or you guys kind of integrate them into the fitness side, and then do you see a lot of carryover there?
Absolutely. So with for the first thing that you said, so the golfers that I work with, it helps tremendously that I have a chiropractor in-house or someone who can do like massage therapy or manual therapy, because if they have some sort of mobility issue that I can't deal with, I have someone who can treat them like 30 feet away. So for me, it makes my job much easier. It helps them get whatever they're trying to do. It helps them reach their goals faster, and then just a win-win for everybody. And then to your second point, yes. So when they're going when they're getting treated by our chiropractor, Dr. Booth, takes them through a full assessment. And it's like, hey, this is why your back hurts. So he gives them some quote unquote like corrective exercises that help with that. But then he says, hey, this isn't where it stops. We need to continue training. We need to make you more resilient, get you stronger, and all of that stuff happens out there. So it helps that the chiropractor's office right there, gym is just outside the door, so it's easy for them to go from the chiropractor's office to the gym and then get going with that process. And it's worked very, very well. We've done a pretty good job of keeping people either managing their pain or getting them out of pain, integrating both the chiropractic side and the fitness side.
From the fitness side, when you're working with somebody, at what point, and say this is a person that's, you know, having no real painful issues or anything like that, but when is it that you kind of decide, you know what, we need a little bit more mobility here. I'm going to send you over to the chiro to take care of that. Like at what point do you say like, all right, we need to kind of take another step and send you over in that direction?
So we take them through every client that walks through the door. We either take them through if they're a golfer, take them through a TPI assessment, FMS, or SFMA, or some versions of those. So if I see a golfer and say we check internal rotation of his hip. So he can't internally rotate into his right hip. So what I'll do is I'll do a passive and active test. So I'll see passively or actively how much range of motion he gets. Then what I'll do is get him on the table and check it passively. And if I feel like it's just there's no improvement, it doesn't feel like it can go any farther, at that point, that's when I refer them to Dr. Booth.
Okay. So
because that's something that they're going to need a little bit more help, and that's a little bit outside of my expertise. So I let Dr. Booth do what he does best, and then once he works his magic, he gets them back to me, and then he allows me to do what I do best.
That's cool. So I like that you guys have kind of a set parameter there where, hey, I can't push this person or you know, manipulate them into this position, and that's where you take him or her over to the chiropractor. They can do the hands-on treatment. They can, you know, maybe do some other techniques, some active or passive range of motion kind of stuff, and then, you know, let them, like you said, work their magic, then bring them back over, and maybe then it's just more of an active kind of a thing where you're doing some of the FRC stuff and working on some of those kind of techniques.
Exactly. And luckily I've run into more stability type issues than mobility issues, which is good. And it's a good thing for whoever I'm working with, either it's a golfer or general population, that it's something that it can be trained. And I think ultimately that's something that they want to hear, because they've been dealing with these issues, and a lot of times they don't know why. So if we can shed some light on it, say, hey, your hip can actually do this. You just don't have control over that range of motion. So it's almost like it's a weight lifted off their shoulders, and it's awesome. It's really awesome to see.
Explain that just a little bit. You mentioned, you know, a stability problem versus mobility problem, and I think we hear those terms all the time. But for you to just kind of clarify a little bit more what you mean there, so people can understand why that's a good thing that they've got not the mobility issue but the stability issue.
So if I say I'm doing a passive like hip internal rotation test, so if they do it actively and they only get to 10 degrees, and then all of a sudden I can manually turn them to 30 degrees, it's not that their hip can't do it. They just don't have control over that other 20 degrees of range of motion. So getting them to get into that position and then teach them essentially how to produce force in that position is going to allow them to increase their mobility.
Gotcha. Perfect explanation there. And I think that's so important for many of us to realize that, that whole concept of us needing to be more flexible, because I'm sure you hear it all the time. Golfers come in, I got to get more flexible. But sometimes you get them in that position. You're like, well, actually, you've got what you need here, and so you don't need to grab a strap and just keep stretching on it. What you need to do is learn how to control that more.
Absolutely, and more times than not, it's more of a stability based issue. So it's funny. Like, one of the things I'll do is if they can't bend over or touch their toes, I'll lie them on the table, and then basically what I'll have them do is like pin like a yoga block between their knees, and then I'll have them do like a curl up where they're basically laying down on the ground and then curling up and touching their toes. Then all of a sudden they can get to their toes. So it's like, okay, what's the difference between those two? Like, one, you have to stabilize your own body weight. The other one, gravity's stabilizing you. So what gives?
Right.
Like, if you truly couldn't get down and touch your toes, you wouldn't be able to do it standing or lying down. So when they see that, it's like, oh, okay, I get it. And then we start to do some exercises to help bridge that gap. And then all of a sudden they can get to their toes and we didn't do any stretching. And then it blows their mind.
Yeah. No, what do you mean no stretching to touch my toes?
Yeah, exactly.
That's blasphemy.
I thought I was supposed to stretch. Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Cool. Well, I love that to kind of get an idea of what you guys are doing there and just kind of the population that you work with. Well, give us a little background on you, though. So you were a competitive golfer. You're competing in long drive competitions now. And so we're going to dive into a lot of the power talk and the distance talk and the way that you kind of structure those things. But you mentioned that you were born and raised in Nevada playing some competitive amateur golf. So kind of give us the quick rundown of your history and what took you into this whole field of golf and performance.
Absolutely. So like you said, I was born and raised in Las Vegas. So growing up, I was a very, very active kid. So I played basically everything you could imagine, was just active all day long. Even when I was like in first grade, I used to, while watching TV during the commercial breaks, I would bang out push-ups, bang out sit-ups, because I just had all this energy and I didn't know what to do with it. So I used exercise to get that out. And then played a lot of just like soccer, t-ball, baseball, all that growing up. And then when I was about 12 or 13, that's when I really started to play golf seriously. And then growing up, I was very wiry. So for example, my freshman year of high school, I was 6'2", 150 pounds. So when it got windy outside, I was afraid I was going to get blown away by a gust of wind. But it was my sophomore year, I was able to sign up for weight training in high school. So that's basically where everything changed for me. That's where I got introduced to the weight room. The weight training coach was the head football coach as well. And luckily for me, he was an avid golfer. And he knew that I was a golfer, and he loved the fact that I was in there lifting weights. So I think he went a little bit out of his way to show me proper technique with everything. And he loved that I was not afraid to get after it. So I started at 155. I think I was about 155 my sophomore year. By the end of my sophomore year, I was about 175. So I put on about 20 pounds of muscle. And that basically changed everything for me. My sophomore year, I had the best high school season I ever had. Like, I think I medaled in every match or close to every match. I won regional, and then I came top 5 in state.
Wow.
And I played really well over the summer. Like, I had a really good season that season. And I definitely think the weight training had a lot to do with it. I was hitting the ball farther. I just felt better out there. And for 155 pound kids who put on 15 pounds of muscle, like, it did a lot for my confidence. So walking out to the first tee, like, I was filling on my shirt a little bit more. Like, I felt like I could just dominate. So putting on a little bit of muscle for the golfer, like, you can't overestimate what that does to their confidence. And if you know a golfer's confident when they're standing on that first tee, that plays a huge role in their success.
Yeah. We had Rennie Camrata on here not too long ago, and he talked about that exact same thing, is, especially with those junior golfers, when they start to find something that they're good at, or they start to, again, like you said, just kind of add a little poundage, their posture gets a little better, and the confidence, it plays into the mental game so much. So I can only imagine you going from 155 to 175, not only because the distance has changed, but also just being able to go up there and strike a ball, without really thinking about it, because now you've got this weight behind you.
Absolutely. And that's when I was hooked. So I've basically, that's when I started training, and I haven't stopped training ever since. And
so then you then what did you do in college? Did you play competitively in college as well?
So I played for a junior college in Iowa, so Indian Hills Community College. So I played 2 years there, and then once I was done there, I decided that golf really wasn't what I wanted to pursue anymore. So that's when I got into personal training. So one of my early mentors, he got me, basically he was the one who showed me the way as far as who I should be, what books I should be reading, who I should be following, what events I should be attending. So that basically just set the foundation for me as far as like getting the right knowledge base, getting the right info, and just applying that.
What were some of the insights that he gave you there, just as far as what books were you reading then?
Well, so I went to the first book that I ever read on training was the first Mike Boyle's was it Functional Training for Sports. It was the very first one. So the funny thing is, I actually read that book in high school. I was playing at a golf course, or one of the golf courses I grew up playing at. And the bartender at the golf course, he was a pretty fit guy, and he liked to work out. He said, "Hey, you gotta read this book by Mike Boyle." And he was just talking about, like, it was introducing like Bosu ball work, stability ball work, single leg work, and at that time I was still in high school, and that's when I was doing like the bigger, faster, stronger program from for that the high school football team was doing. And so that got me into the world of like the quote unquote like functional training. That's when I started to implement like more single leg work, more like unilateral type stuff. Then another book so he got me in contact. Well, basically opened my eyes to Mike Boyle. So I started looking more into his stuff. Then like guys like Charlie Weingroff, and then the guys at TPI like Greg Rose, Dave Phillips, all of them, like they all really shaped the way that I think even today.
Yeah, not a bad crowd to be surrounding yourself in their literature,
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean, those are the guys that are, kind of paving the way, and all, kind of different respects too. They've all got their own take on different things and have a little bit different style, but I mean, the knowledge base there is phenomenal. So then let's kind of jump in to your competitive career in the long drive stuff now. I know how long ago did you start doing this?
So actually, my first event was actually in July. So that I've only competed once, unfortunately. It was something that I probably should have done about 3 years ago, but I just kind of held it off. And then I attended the TPI Level 2 Power course in Oceanside. And then I was hitting some balls out there, and I was getting my ball speed pretty high. And Greg Rose was like, "Hey, if you can get your ball speed above 200 to a 210, like you can give this a shot." So
wow.
Definitely took his advice. So I started training, and it is definitely a different change of pace from normal golf. Because one, you're just trying to hit it as absolutely as far as possible.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a different swing, but you still have to keep it in play somewhat. So where I was up in Denver, it was set up perfectly for you to bomb it, but we're at Denver, so we're out elevation. It was warm. It was in the 90s, which Denver doesn't really get in the 90s all that often, and it was very, very dry. But the grid, I think, was only 38 yards wide at that one.
Wow.
So for a long drive, that's pretty narrow. So anything that curved towards the out of bounds was taking a huge hop and bouncing out of bounds. So I only got one drive on the grid, and it was one that I hit awful, but I got it out there 418. So I was shocked when I hit that part because I hit it absolutely awful. And I didn't even look up to see where it went.
Wow.
And I teed my ball up and then just looked up at the screen and it said 418. I'm like, are you kidding me?
And
like the ones that hit out of bounds.
Rod, what were some of the bigger numbers there, or the one that won?
Oh, some guy, I think, what's his name? People were hitting, there was a few guys that hit it over 500, and then there was some women that hit over 400. So it was set up just absolutely like perfect for you to bomb it. If you bombed one and you hit it straight, like that thing was gone. So it was definitely a learning experience for not only what to expect, but also just in the training leading up to it. I was pretty beat up. So hitting golf balls, that many golf balls for that long, swinging it that hard, it takes a toll on your body. So in retrospect, there's a few things that I would tweak, and I'm definitely tweaking leading up to the next one that I'm going to compete in. But you can't go out there every day and swing it as hard as you possibly can. That's for sure.
So now kind of going through this process, you see, the difference in how you're training for that specific event, trying to hit it as far as possible. What have you now taken back to the population that you're working with at Elevate, where, it's more golfers that are trying to play golf, but obviously they want more distance, and, distance is important for many factors. And I'll kind of let you expand on that a little bit, but what's like one big thing that you've taken away from your training for the long drive stuff to bring back and say to the clientele that you were already working with, like, hey, here's something I really took out of this, and we're going to start implementing with you guys?
Absolutely. So going back to how this can help even the average golfer, not only on the PGA Tour, like professional golfers, but for the average golfer. Like TrackMan, they did a study, I can't remember how long ago, but they showed a pretty like direct correlation between ball speed and handicap. So essentially, the higher your ball speed was, the lower your handicap was. So now, I mean, I'm sure it was a pretty small sample size, so it's not 100% correct, but I think the farther you can hit the ball, you can potentially shoot better. Absolutely. And even on the PGA Tour, LPGA Tour, the guys who hit the farthest tend to make the most money.
Yeah.
And it's by a long ways. Even I was just looking at it this year. So if you look at the top 10 on the money list right now, 8 out of the 10, they average over 300 yards. So and then the guys who were under 300, it was like 297 and 290, I believe. So it wasn't like they were too far off.
Right.
So it definitely pays to hit the ball far for the average golfer as well as the professional golfer. So
what is it that these guys do differently, or like you with your long drive stuff, to hit a ball farther? What are the big components that people need to think about maybe in their swing technique or maybe even their training? But what are the big factors that determine how far you're going to hit a ball and how you can get more distance from where you are today?
Absolutely. So I think there's 3 things, like as far as how just even like the average golfer, what they could do to take home to hit the ball farther is, 1, get fit for the right driver. So coming from a fitness professional, that's probably something you're not expecting to hear, but if you have the right equipment, your ball speed is going to be faster. So if you have good launch angle, good spin rate, the ball's going to go farther. It's going to come off the club face faster. And then the second one is good swing technique. So if you're hitting the center of the club face, that's also going to make the ball go farther. So that's where a quality instruction comes into play as well. And then the third would be the physical aspect of it. So now that's looking at like mobility, stability, power, strength, all of that. So once you have good equipment, good physical coaching or technique coaching, then we can work on the physical aspect. We can work on the horse, building your horsepower, if you will.
Let me take a second to thank our sponsor for this week's episode, Super Speed Golf. If you haven't heard about them, you should have if you've been listening to the 18 Strong podcast. They are an overspeed training system that is just working magic with not only the amateur golfers, but you're seeing guys like last week's winner, Ian Poulter, Phil Mickelson, all of these guys using the super speed clubs to first, some of these guys are trying to regain speed that they used to have years ago. I just watched an interview of Phil talking about how he's now back up to the swing speeds and maybe even a little bit above of where he was in his prime. And he attributes a lot of it to the overspeed, underspeed, or, overweight, underweight swinging with the super speed golf clubs. And same with Ian Poulter. If you aren't a member of our private Facebook group, the 18 Strong Movement, we've got a great thread going on in there right now of a lot of professionals and golfers kind of asking questions about the super speed clubs. And we've got people like Kyle Shea from Super Speed Golf giving their input on, what are certain techniques to use that are most beneficial? How do we use the protocols properly? And some great discussion on what and why they work so well. So if you're not in our Facebook group, go to the 18 Strong Movement over there. But if you haven't checked out the Super Speed Golf Clubs, go to superspeedgolf.com. Be sure to use the code 18 Strong when you decide to buy a set, because I'm sure you will. People are seeing huge results, both in their balance, their distance, their swing speed. And I know that it's made a big difference in my game as well as the game of many of my clients and a lot of the listeners of the show. So again, superspeedgolf.com, use the code 18 Strong. And so regarding the horsepower part then, we're talking training. You mentioned that there's a lot of different factors. There's the mobility, there's the strength, there's the power side. Help me differentiate a little bit amongst, I think especially strength versus power. I think that sometimes those terms get used almost synonymously, but I know that you being a power coach, that there's a big difference there for you. And how do we go about training those differently, and when do we train those?
Absolutely. So as far as like the breakdown what power is, I mean, to dumb it down, it's essentially just strength times speed. So can you put a lot of force in the ground, and can you put it into the ground at fast? So if you can do those two things, you're going to be powerful. So an example that I like to use is if I was standing about 50 feet away from a glass window and I wanted to break it, and I had a pebble, I had a shot put, and I had a baseball. So if I throw the pebble, it's going to move very fast, but there's not going to be enough force to really do anything to the window. So now if I try to throw the shot put, it's going to be very heavy, but I'm not going to be able to move it fast enough to even get it to the glass window. Then now if I have a baseball, that's something that I'm going to be able to throw very fast. That's going to actually be able to break the window. So now that's more what power is. So it's your ability to put force on the ground at a very fast rate.
That's a good example, because I think a lot of people would look at, say, somebody doing a deadlift, and they do a massive amount of weight, and maybe they're just kind of grinding it out slowly. They get to the top, and I could see somebody saying, "Man, that guy's powerful," but that wouldn't really be necessarily the definition of power, because it didn't have quite the speed. And so that little example you gave with the baseball, the speed of the baseball versus the speed of the shot put, I think that really kind of clarifies a little bit. So what are the differences then when we're training for power versus just training for strength? What are some of the differing factors there?
So, I mean, with strength, you're basically trying to move the heaviest way possible for the set number of reps. So if I'm training for strength, I'm keeping that roughly around 5 reps, usually below. But for power training, we do want to have some weight to it, but we got to be able to move that weight fast. So if you look at stuff like your Olympic lifts, your kettlebell, like ballistic exercises, weighted jumps, your throws, like with the medicine ball, those are going to be working more on the power side of it, whereas a heavy 3-rep max deadlift, we're working more on pure strength. The way that the speed of the bar on like an Olympic lift is moving much faster than that 3-rep max deadlift. So training the Olympic lifts, that's more of you training power. The heavy deadlift is more training the strength. They're both necessary. I mean, they're both part of the equation, but we just got to figure out which one do you have, or which one are you lacking? Are you lacking strength? Are you lacking speed? Are you lacking both? That's where the testing really comes into play.
Yeah, how does somebody know what they're lacking, whether it be strength or speed, and then when they do figure that out, kind of take us where we go from there?
Absolutely. So what I like to do is I like to do the TPI level 2 power screen. So that's going to involve a vertical jump. It's going to involve a chest pass. That's going to involve a sit up and throw, and then a rotational shot put. So with the vertical jump, you're obviously checking your lower body power. So the number that we're looking for there, for basically on PGA Tour, the average is 18 to 22 inches. And then LPGA Tour is 14 to 18 inches. So for the chest test, so now we're checking your push power as well as your wrist release power. We are looking for 18 to 22 feet for the males and 14 to 18 feet for the females. Sit up and throw. So now we're checking your pull power, your core power, and your chop power. That is PGA Tour average 18 to 22 feet again. LPGA Tour is 14 to 18 feet. So we're seeing a lot of similarities there. And then with the shot put, that's basically all three of your power sources combined and just seeing how well you can express that. So with that, it should be essentially, if you were to, it should be the average of your three previous tests. Get that average number, times it by 1.5, and then it should be roughly about 30 feet for the men.
And the just to clarify, the chest path, sit and throw, shot put, those are all done with medicine ball, right?
Correct. And that medicine ball is going to be roughly 5% of your body weight. So, for instance, if you're a 200-pound male, you're going to be using a 10-pound medicine ball.
Gotcha. And is this something that you recommend? I mean, obviously, this is something that the fitness professionals listening that have been through the TPI courses, they know and they've been doing with their clients at the gym. But do you recommend that somebody not working with a professional even try this stuff on their own?
Yeah, I mean, if you have the space and you have a medicine ball and you have a measuring tape or something to measure it, absolutely. They're relatively safe tests, but this is going to give you a very good indicator of your power output. So it's going to give you a really good idea of where your power is and where it isn't. Also, what I've seen with this too is, depending, like if you look at power numbers, ideally we want to have equal numbers across the board. But a lot of times what I've seen is you'll get someone who has a lot of upper body power. So their upper body power numbers are like within like tour average. And then their lower body, their vertical jump power is low. So if you watch this person swing, they're going to be very choppy from the top of their swing because they're going to rely on their major power sources. And for them, that's their upper body power. So in order for someone, if they have a very hard time to come over, if they're chopping down on it, coming over the top, or just are really fast with their arms, getting them to get a little bit more explosive with their lower body can actually help that.
And after going through these tests, so you said it's good to see equal amongst all three or four of the tests as far as the numbers are concerned. How does somebody, so let's say they see, okay, I'm a little more upper body dominant, I need to work on my lower body power. How do they know? Is that a speed thing? Is it a strength thing? What test can they then go from there?
So from there, I like to do strength testing because strength testing is much easier to test than speed testing. So what I like to do for that is a split squat test of the lower body. And basically what I'm looking for is, can they do 150% of their body weight for a perceived 8 reps? So for example, 200-pound male, he should be able to do 8 reps with 2 50-pound dumbbells equaling 100 pounds. So he should be able to do that both right and left leg. And then if he can do that, then he's got adequate strength to get that vertical jump number, the 18 to 22 feet that we're looking for. And then for the standing cable press, they should be able to do 25% of their body weight. So essentially a 200-pound golfer should be able to press 50 pounds for 8 reps. And then a standing cable row, they should be able to do 30% of their body weight for 8 reps. So again, 200-pound golfer should be able to do at least 60 pounds for 8 reps.
Gotcha. And here's something. I noticed that every gym you go to has a different cable stack. And obviously you're always testing on the same one. What do you recommend for somebody? How do they know that they're testing it right? Because I know that the one stack we have at our place, it's like 50 pounds. My 5-year-old son might be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. Just make sure the one that you're using is accurate. That'd be the best advice I can give. But just make sure that's an adjustable cable pulley. And yeah, as far as the accuracy of it, that's I don't know what to say as far as that goes.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like, you go to one and it's a different pulley system. What brand do you guys use? Do you guys have a Life Fitness one, or I know that's what a lot of TPI stuff is based off of.
Yeah, we have Life Fitness. We've gotten a lot of use out of that. It's a great company, great piece of equipment.
Cool. All right, so then let's talk about just kind of ways to train power. When you have somebody that's, let's take kind of more not the competitive, looking to go professional or high level collegiate player. Let's talk about kind of the regular guy comes in, works out maybe a couple times a week, has a job, has kids, but definitely wants to improve their fitness level for their golf game. How do you mix in the power stuff? And is this something that everybody needs to periodize throughout the year? Because obviously I know a lot of the, guys that are working in corporate America, they don't really care about periodizing throughout the year. So how do you kind of tie that into their workout? When should they put it in their program? And how do you kind of get around all those other obstacles?
Yeah, so I mean, with people who have worked 40 days or 40 hours a week, have kids, like they're already a little stressed out to begin with, so you can't really throw on a whole lot of other extra stress on them. So basically, you have to do what I like to do is basically train it all year round. So it's very tough, even for like the guys that you're saying, the corporate America guys, and even harder for the professional golfer who's traveling all the time, because their off season is like a month, maybe. I think it's very tough to do some like block periodization with that. So I like to do more of like a concurrent model where it's basically you're doing a bit of everything. So it takes a little bit slower to build those power numbers up, but you can train it more often, more frequently. So that's more of the approach that I like. So I always start with their power work at the very beginning of the workout. So after the done warm up, that's when we do whatever power that we're working on. It could be a box jump. It could be maybe a kettlebell swing. If they're more advanced, we're doing weighted jumps or Olympic lifts, stuff like that. So I put that in more in the beginning of the session. And then if there's a time in place or a time in the block where I can maybe throw in some like contrast training in the actual strength block or the strength sets that we're working, then we can throw that in there. And I think those are really good for teaching golfers how to create power. And yeah, it's a tough thing. It's more of, you got to remember you're not training elite level athletes. They're not peaking for the Olympics. They're not peaking for any particular event. They're just trying to get basically just generally more powerful, stronger, better endurance, move better. So that's more of the approach that I like to take.
Yeah, it's hard when you don't have like you said, one specific event that you're training for. Unlike, I would assume that your training style for yourself, when you have an event, you've probably got it a little bit more structured out where, okay, I need to work on the strength piece, I need to work on the power piece, those kinds of things. And so that looks way different than when you're training, Jim Jones, who, he wants to win his club championship, but doesn't necessarily have a big event outside of that. He's also here for the health side, the fitness side, the moving better side. So I think finding that whole balance is really important. So I like that you mentioned, that you tie it in, you do it concurrently, and why you do that. Why? Explain just a little further why at the beginning of the workout, as opposed to doing a ton of medicine ball throws at the end of the workout.
Well, they're just a little bit more neurologically fresh, so they're going to be able to produce more power at the very beginning. But towards the end, they're going to be a little more tired, so that power output is going to be decreased. So I just like to do it when they're a little bit more fresh. I think we get much better quality out of it at the beginning of the workout.
Yeah, I think that whole central nervous system thing has really become pretty well known over the past several years. I think we're starting to realize how if you try to do too much, you try to go crazy and do it at full speed all the time, circuit after circuit after circuit. You kind of fry that stuff, and and you really just end up slowing down and teaching bad patterns as opposed to, proper crisp patterns. So what are some of your favorite power style exercises for that group of golfers? I know you mentioned some different things. I saw you doing a couple videos. You always have, by the way, guys, go check out Brad's Instagram. He's always got different videos of what they're doing at Elevate and some of the cool toys that they have. So what are some of your favorite toys to use or different styles to use?
Sure. So the exercise, I like to use exercises that have basically the steepest learning curve. So it's going to be easy for them to pick up on fast. So for me, I think jumps are tremendous for that. Like weighted jumps with a hex bar are great for that. Kettlebell swings, I'm a huge fan of. Dumbbell snatches are great. They're all exercises that you can produce a lot of power with that don't take a whole lot of coaching and don't take a whole lot of time to learn, as opposed to like the Olympic lifts.
Yeah.
Those are, don't get me wrong, Olympic lifts they're amazing. And the Olympic lifters are some of the most powerful athletes on the planet. Like there's no denying that. But when you have someone, like you said, who's only coming in 2 times a week and he only has an hour with you, you want to try to use your time as wisely as possible, but get the maximum effect. And I've just found that teaching a lot of the Olympic lifts, it eats up a lot of the time. So I just prefer exercises where I can get them to produce lots of power in a short amount of time.
Sure. And then regarding the mobility stuff, because I know that obviously you're an FRC practitioner. We mentioned earlier, with the chiropractor there in-house. How do you kind of tie in, or when do you tie in kind of in a training session? When do you tie in some of the mobility stuff? Because I know that can become a question too, like, how do I work on all this mobility if I'm trying to do some of this other strength and power stuff? When do you work that in, or is that all kind of homework stuff, or are you guys working on it in the sessions as well?
Yes. So they're doing it basically as a part of their warm up. They're doing mobility work. So if I'm working with a golfer who has a specific issue, we're starting our session with some exercises towards that specific issue, whatever it may be. And then we go through our very general dynamic warm up, and then we do all of our power stuff. And then what I like to do is, as kind of like, because I like to do like triceps with a lot of my golfers and a lot of my clients. So what I'll do is I'll have a lower body exercise, an upper body exercise, and a lot of times I'll throw in that third exercise as a mobility exercise. Okay. Because a lot of times after that lower body and upper body, they need a little break. So throwing in some sort of mobility exercise that allows them to just slow down, get their heart rate back down, I think it works really well for me. So that's when I incorporate it. And then at the end of the session, we do some mobility, static stretching, all that stuff to help with recovery. So they're doing it all the time. So either in the session, at home, wherever, they're constantly doing their mobility work.
Cool. And how have you found that all of that mobility work plays into, we've been talking about power this whole episode, but how do you find that then plays into the power training?
Well, it makes them more efficient as far as like transferring their energy. So if they can use their stress shortening cycle better, more efficiently, they're going to be more powerful, because they're actually going to be able to snap the rubber band now. So that's the analogy that I use for them. So if you can pull back on that rubber band and just let it go real quick, it's going to snap real hard. But if you can't pull back very far because the rubber band's too tight, you're not going to really produce a whole lot of snap. So that's where the mobility work comes in with the power training.
And what would you say, are there any prerequisites before doing, we talked about the power exercises, before doing some of that stuff? What are some of the big like prerequisites that you would say, you got to fix this stuff first before we can get into X, Y, Z?
So as far as like, if we're doing any sort of like lower body, like heavy lifting, power exercise, vertical jump, the one thing that I'm looking, or actually a few things that I'm looking for, is do they have pelvic control, and do they have adequate hip mobility as far as like flexion, extension, abduction, rotation, all of that? And can they control their pelvis as they're doing it? Because what I see with a lot of golfers is they're stuck in that S posture. So if they're stuck in that S posture, that means if they can't posteriorly tilt, they're not going to be able to use their posterior chain as effectively, and they're not going to be getting the most out of their power training. And chances are they're probably going to end up hurting something, probably the low back. So working on pelvic control and getting them to be able to anteriorly tilt, posteriorly tilt, and then transfer that to something like a deadlift, and then be able to transfer that to, say, like a kettlebell swing or a jump is extremely important. And I've seen, even just working on that, golfers who may have some experience lifting, but they just don't have any pelvic awareness, pelvic control. Teach them how to actually control their pelvis, use their glutes, all that. Then all of a sudden they get back to the normal lifts or the normal jumps, and all of a sudden strength numbers went up, and then power number goes up. And then now it's purely just efficiency.
Wow. Yeah, you just kind of see that link in the chain connected, and all of a sudden all the other work that they've been doing starts to come together. That's awesome.
Exactly.
All right, my man, before we finish up, got a couple questions for you here. First and foremost, Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore?
That's a tough one. I'm gonna have to go with Caddyshack. It's a timeless classic, and it never gets old. No matter how many times I watch it, I always find new jokes, and yeah, it's just can't beat it.
It's so quotable. It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Even non-golfers that I know, they can quote it. So it's, yeah.
If you could pick a walk-up song, what's your walk-up song to the first tee box?
I'm going to go with Hate Me Now by Nas. That song gets me going. I don't know how many rap songs you've had your guests say they walk up to, but it gets me going. So
we've had a run of the gamut here on the show, from Frank Sinatra
I already know,
to AC/DC to now Nas. All right, 18.
Nice. Awesome.
If you could play 18 holes of golf with anyone in the world, who would it be, and where would you play?
I would play with Ben Hogan at Augusta National. So you always hear these stories about Ben Hogan and just how great of a ball striker he was. Like, I just would like to see that in person and just see if the legend is true. And then Augusta National, Masters is right around the corner, and there's no place like it.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. I'm already, watching the Golf Channel, seeing some of the highlights from previous Masters, and it's like you just get that tingly feeling inside, like, oh, it's almost here. It's almost here.
Absolutely.
All right, man.
It never gets old.
Any last piece of advice for the 18 Strong community?
So all I'll tell them is get assessed, figure out what your weak points are, and just attack them. It's the best way to get better.
I love it. Brad, thanks for taking the time to come on the show. Really appreciate it. I love what you're doing. Everybody needs to go check out all your videos on Instagram, kind of check out what's going on at Elevate. I know you guys are doing some great stuff. So once again, thanks for coming on the show, and we'll be in touch very, very soon.
Appreciate it, Jeff. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thanks for joining us this week on the 18 Strong podcast. If you want any more information on Brad, or you want to check out Elevate Sports Performance and Chiropractic, just go to the show notes page, which is at 18strong.com. You can find the episode number 186. You can search for Brad, and it will pop right up. Also, want to say a big thanks to our sponsor for this week's episode, Super Speed Golf. Really appreciate all the support that they've given us here, and their product speaks for itself. Go over to superspeedgolf.com and check out all the success that all of their players are having on tour, as well as in your local country clubs and community golf centers. And lastly, again, if you don't have a plan, you don't have a program to get in better shape, to feeling better, moving better, playing better, having more endurance at the end of your round, it's time for you to follow a program. And we've got one for you at golfbodyblueprint.com. We've seen tons of success with our clients so far, with the people that have gone through the program and sent us their feedback. So I guarantee that you're going to love the program. And if you follow it like it's designed, there is no way that you're not going to get better. All right, we'll catch up with you next week. Train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.